Hello, and welcome to She Leads Biotech, the podcast that celebrates women leaders in the bioscience space. I'm your host, Sharron Cox, CEO and Managing Director of CNA International, based right here in New York. And each week I'll be talking to women leaders about their work, their triumphs and challenges, providing invaluable insight into how women can unlock their superpowers and succeed on their own terms. So whether you're navigating your own career path in bioscience or you're passionate about science and innovation, I hope you're empowered and inspired by each episode. Today's guest's journey into biomedical engineering wasn't born in a classroom. It started in a clinic, sitting beside her mother, who was battling cervical cancer, where she saw firsthand the power of innovation in medicine. But it wasn't just her mother's illness that fueled her fire. She faced her own debilitating struggle with chronic UTIs and antibiotic resistance. Instead of accepting the status quo, she dove into research, cultivated lab data, and transformed her findings into With Meraki, a company that creates science-backed supplements for vaginal, urinary, and hormonal health. From pitching for her first $1,000 to winning grants, growing a TikTok following of over 140,000 and becoming a full-time founder. Her story is about grit, growth, and the power of science meeting soul. So please welcome the founder and CEO of With Meraki, Giana Jarrah. Giana, hi, good morning.
Good morning, Sharron. How are you?
I'm very well indeed, and happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday.
Well, listen, I really appreciate you taking the time out to spend some time with us this morning. And where am I speaking to you from? Where are you based?
In Pennsylvania.
Okay, so you're just over the border from me then, so because I'm in New York, so we're almost neighbours.
Almost neighbors, just smushed right in the middle of two great cities. So
excellent. I think I've actually driven through Pennsylvania. I've driven there on my way to
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah.
There you go. So I had to go to Ohio at one time and I drove through Pennsylvania, which was a little bit scary because I'd never driven in the US before. Well, listen, I really want to talk about your company and what you're doing, but I'd like to start with your story of your why. Why did you go into the field of biomed? Your degree's in
Yes, I'm a biomedical engineer by degree, and I pursued it actually growing up. So I'm first generation Syrian American. My mom is an immigrant from Syria, which is in the Middle East. And growing up, my parents are always like, oh, you should be a doctor or a lawyer. And I feel like a lot of people from ethnic homes can relate to that. And I don't know, neither one of those really stuck with me. I was always super artistic growing up. I loved drawing, painting, all of those things. But in the classic ethnic home, it was like, there's no money in that. There's no career in that. You need to be a doctor or a lawyer. And as I started to get older, I started to develop a passion for science. I knew that I loved science. And when you think of science as a kid, you think of doctor. But something was missing about being a doctor. And it wasn't until my mom was diagnosed with an aggressive stage of pre-cervical cancer when I was 16 years old that introduced me to the world of biomedical engineering. And that was because a team of doctors actually and engineers, they created a device that would extract the abnormal cells from her cervix. And when they were telling us about it, that was like my aha moment where it was the blend between creating something and being creative in the medical field. And it blended my two passions, the passion I was growing for science and the human body, physiology, anatomy. I was just like falling in love with that, but also loved creating things. And so I was like, I want to do what those people do. I want to be a biomedical engineer. And so I pursued my degree at Lehigh University. I was so dead set that I did early decision one my senior year of high school. I was like, I'm going to Lehigh University. I'm doing biomedical engineering. And thankfully I got in and I pursued my degree. And while I was pursuing my degree, I battled my own reproductive health issues where I was diagnosed with chronic and recurring urinary tract infections. So I got my first UTI my sophomore year of college. And once I got that first one, they would not go away. They just kept coming back. And I didn't know why. I didn't know enough about my vaginal health or urinary reproductive health, given that I do come from an ethnic home. And I just feel that there's now, in hindsight, there's a lack of education in the United States around female reproductive health, especially to young girls. So I was only like 19 at the time. I didn't know enough about my body. And when you Google things, it just tells you very surface level of, oh, this is why you got a UTI, or you need to drink cranberry juice, things that just like are so surface level. So I kept getting UTI after UTI, and really my why and what pushed me into my business and creating my business was when I was having all these UTIs, I saw a specialist. And at this point, I was already resistant to 3 different antibiotics. So I saw a specialist and they told me that they were going to do 6 months of antibiotic therapy. And that was where I was fed up, because I knew that that was insane. I was already resistant to 3 different kinds of antibiotics. So to just suggest to me 6 months of antibiotic therapy was an absolute no-brainer of a no-can-do. So I walked away from that appointment just frustrated, angry, and disheartened, because I knew, especially being that I was a junior at this point. So I was really into my studies as a biomedical engineer, and I was learning about the growing concern of antibiotic resistance, and that I was growing resistant bacteria in my urinary tract. And I was frustrated because I knew someone like my mom or the average American woman, if she's told that by her doctor, she would do the antibiotic therapy. So I was frustrated because I turned it away because of my knowledge, but the average person isn't studying to be a biomedical engineer or isn't studying medicine. So they're just going to trust a specialist and trust their doctor. So I was like, there has to be another answer. And that prompted me to start reading scholarly articles, medical journals. And in that, I found the world of the vaginal microbiome and probiotics. And I actually learned that all the antibiotics I was taking was depleting my vaginal microbiome of all of the healthy, protective, and necessary good bacteria that's meant to protect me from pathogens that cause UTIs, BV, and yeast infections. And so I asked my professor if I could do independent study with her. I got in a lab, we started growing probiotics, simulating the vaginal microbiome, and I was proving right in front of my face and my professor's face that good bacteria produces lactic acid, and that's what generates an acidic pH in the vagina and protects the vagina from these bad guys. And once I was in the lab and really studying this and researching it, I was like, well, then oral probiotics are the key. Probiotic supplementation is the key. But when I started building out a criteria, there was no gold standard probiotic on the market. So it was the classic, well, then why don't I be the change that I want to see in the world? And so thus With Meraki Co was born, and I launched my first probiotic supplement in August of 2022.
So where did the name With Meraki, where did that come from? Does it mean anything?
It does mean something. And I love this story because once I had my criteria and I was working, I found a lab and everything. I was like, okay, I need a business name. I need to file like an LLC before we start manufacturing and stuff. And I was like, what do I name my products? And I did a cool names Google search, like cool, unique names. And I was trying to find like these really like cool, cute names. And the word Meraki came up, and I read it, and it means to do something with love, soul, and creativity, and to leave a piece of yourself in your work. And I was like, oh my God, wait, this fits with the brand and like my passion, my why. And so I chose not just to do Meraki, but I was like With Meraki Co. So with love, soul, and creativity company. So
okay,
that's where the whole WMC With Meraki Co. came from.
Excellent. Okay. So what did you do? Did you just say, well, I'll just start the company, and so that's what you did, or did you have to go and get a certain amount of funding to get you started? If so, where did that come from? How was that? I'm fascinated how you just, okay, let's just make this happen.
Well, so I said I want to turn it into a business, but I had no idea how to do it. I was lost because at my core, I'm a scientist.
Yep.
And so I'm the first in my family to have a business. I didn't know how to do any of it. So fortunately enough, when I was studying probiotics, I used my capstone study to study probiotics. And one of my graders at the university happened to be someone in the business school at Lehigh. And he had just like fell in love with my research and stuff. And he just said, hey, if you ever need anything, like don't hesitate to reach out. And so we went on winter break. And when I came back, I had written his name down after that grading session. And when I came back from winter break, this was the spring semester, my senior year of college. I was like, I'm going to reach out to him. And his name was Chris. So I had reached out to him and I said, hey, so I actually do want to turn this into a business, but I don't know how. I don't know what to do. So he's like, come to the Baker Institute at Lehigh University and we will talk about it. And the Baker Institute really took me under their wing and they started coaching me on what to do. Everything from like the basics of filing an LLC to what to look for when and what to ask for when I'm speaking to manufacturers, all of these things. And I didn't, obviously at the time I was working a part-time job at a local hospital in a lab, in a microbiology lab. So very in the space, but I was a broke college student, so I didn't have any money. And they allowed me to pitch at the Eureka Pitch Nights at the university, which is intended for literally students like me, where we're broke college students, but we have a dream. We want to make a business. And so the program Eureka was amazing. I pitched at stage 3, my very first time. There's 3 stages. I pitched at the highest stage just because I felt like my business plan was developed at this point. I just needed funding. That's where I was at. And so I did that and I was awarded $1,000. And I was on cloud 9. I was like, yeah, I can file my LLC. So I was so excited, and you could use it on the business necessities, even from like the packaging and all of that I wanted to do. So once I started talking to manufacturers, I realized that for my first batch of inventory, I would need at least $10,000 in order to manufacture my first batch of inventory. And thankfully, I was asked to be a part of Lehigh University's Ventures Lab program when I graduated. And so it's essentially for new and young entrepreneurs who are looking to start their business. You get a lot of mentorship over the summer. So this was the summer that I graduated. So I started my job as a full-time engineer because, of course, I needed a job to pay my bills, but I still wanted to run my business. And so Lehigh's Ventures Lab granted me $10,000, which was just enough to be able to manufacture my first batch of inventory. So without them, I truly would not have been able to start the manufacturing process. So I manufactured my first batch of inventory. And from there, I did other pitch competitions. I'm in the Lehigh Valley. So we had the Startup Lehigh Valley event that took place by Factory LLC in October of 2022. And I pitched and I won the grand prize of $20,000. Plus a $5,000 Ben Franklin Tech Ventures Assistance Grant, which is where I reside now. I'm a Ben Franklin portfolio company. So I've been able to make those connections and I've pitched at competitions. And Ben Franklin, once we connected at that event, and ironically enough, they're located on Lehigh's campus. So they were like, a Lehigh grad, yay, let's talk. And when we talked, that was like the moment where they're like, we have office spaces, let's chat. And I came in, they've awarded me funding since. So I've just had a lot of local support. The Bethlehem, the Keystone Innovation Zone, I've done grants through them, tech transfer grants and things like that. So I've been very, very fortunate to pursue these grants, know about these grants, and then have the opportunity to pursue them and then be awarded those grants. So that's been really helpful with growing and expanding the business, but especially at the start.
And for people who are listening, what and they want to start up, how did you get to know about the grants? How did you know where to go, or did you kind of just follow the path of each one? How does somebody know that these grants and these prizes exist?
Yeah, so I honestly, when Chris said, if you ever need anything, let me know, I wrote his name down, but I reached out to him and said, hey, I need help. So once I asked for help, they saw like how willing I was to learn. And Chris was like, we have Eureka pitch nights. We have this grant pitch. We have from there, I was just told of the opportunities. And then the ball was placed in my court if I wanted to act on it and pursue said grants. So even then, that pitch that happened for the $20,000 in October, Chris at Lehigh, he actually told me, hey, this pitch competition's happening in Bethlehem. You should pursue it. You should try it. And in my head, I would have overlooked it if I saw it on my own, because I was under the impression, like, I already started my business. Why do I need to do another pitch if I already started the business? He's like, oh, no, no, no. Just because you have the business doesn't mean, and you already launched, doesn't mean that you're ineligible. All of the people who are going to be pitching, 90% of them already have their business going. So he was like, you absolutely should apply. So I was like, okay, so certain things like that, I'm blessed to have mentors who were able to guide me, because ultimately, if I would have seen it on my own, I was so not knowledgeable of these things that I would have overlooked so many grant opportunities if it was left up to my discretion without that mentorship. So Chris was the one who was like, you should absolutely pitch. And I was like, okay. So I did the audition, and of like the 200 applicants, they selected 10 of us, and I was one of the finalists. And even that was a huge win for me, to know that I was even selected amongst all of the applicants that they got. And then to go on stage on live TV and then pitch and win was huge. And it goes to show I genuinely would have even skipped applying if I didn't get the push from my mentors to apply. So I think the best part of like finding resources on your own is great, but having that mentorship to know what is right for you, what makes sense to apply to, what doesn't make sense, is the best thing to do when you're starting out as an entrepreneur, is really having a circle of people who want to see you do well and can give you the proper advice.
Everybody's got to go and find a Chris.
Right. Everyone's got to go find a Chris. Absolutely.
There you go. Go find a Chris.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. So you've been going now 3 years?
August will be my 3-year anniversary.
Fantastic. And so where are you at with the business now? Is it still you? Are you building a team? Where are you at?
Yeah, I'm in the process of building a team. We've grown 3x from 2023 to 2024. So we are growing. I've amassed at this point, and one of the biggest accomplishments that I've made is I've been able to go full time. So I'm a full time founder. I did say that I was working as an engineer when I graduated, and that was the obvious. As much as I wanted to be the business owner, founder, and CEO, and I also needed to pay my bills, and it was a reality for me. And so I worked as an engineer while also running my business. So I had a 9 to 5 and then a 5 to like 3 a.m. And then I would go to sleep and repeat. And it was really stressful. It was really hard, but the business was able to grow. And with the help of Ben Franklin Tech Ventures, where I reside now, and their mentorship and their funding, I've been able to, at this point in June of last year, I was able to walk away from my engineering job and be officially a full-time founder. So this is my only job, and I'm very, very grateful to say that. And since leaving, I've amassed over 140,000 followers on TikTok. So I've been able to really dedicate myself to my TikTok platform, because a huge backbone, I create products for urinary, vaginal, reproductive health and wellness. I do that, and I'm very passionate about it. But the backbone is the education, because I talked about earlier that that's the missing piece. And so in me learning and researching, I want to share that knowledge and share that information to young girls, older women going through menopause, postpartum, anyone of all ages. There's so much misinformation out there. There's a lack of education out there. And so providing that education and building a community has always been super important to me. And I started doing that on TikTok while I was working as an engineer and starting the business up. And I had around 30,000 followers. I told my story of my UTIs and my antibiotic resistance. And that video was the first video that I ever posted sharing my story. And it got 2.2 million views. And that was that's what built my wait list on my website. So I didn't even have really, I had stakeholder feedback and stuff like that in my local community, but to reach like a national level of visibility before I even, I was in Ventures Lab at this point. So I was receiving that $10,000 and I was like, oh my God, wait, this is amazing. I had 5,000 people join my wait list before I even had a product. So it was just like incredible that my story resonated with so many women. And that was the validation that a young new graduate entrepreneur needed. I needed that
Absolutely.
because there's a lot of doubt, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of almost, if you will say, like embarrassment that I'm talking about this, but what if it fails? There's so much fear and hesitation, uncertainty when you're starting. And
Yep.
post that, I was like, at a minimum, what I do know is that what I'm doing, the space I'm in, needs more voices, and I could be that voice. I can help in this area. And so that was my motivation, that at a minimum, I was in a space that I knew meant something and knew that I was passionate about. And so I was steadily like creating educational content, running the business. But since going full time and becoming a full time founder, I went from 30,000 followers on TikTok and just in 1 year have grown to 140,000 followers on TikTok. And so making educational content, I currently have a video about endometriosis that's going viral. And it goes to show these things are understudied, under discussed. Like there's a lack of education. There's so much that needs to be improved in female reproductive health. And I'm just super passionate about advancing the space, even through just removing stigma and talking about it. Because as I mentioned, like we didn't talk about the vagina in my home. Like that wasn't something, it was just incredibly stigmatized. And a lot of times things like BV, yeast infections, UTIs, they're always just linked to sex and being promiscuous. And so for me, I was just like, no, we need to remove this stigma so that more people can talk about this and get these things treated. My first UTI, the stigma and the shame made me hide my UTI from my family. And I was so afraid to go to the doctor, so much so that I didn't go to the doctor for an entire week after having a UTI, that the UTI spread to my kidneys. And I'm sure if the listeners don't know, if you leave a urinary tract infection untreated and it does spread to the kidneys, it can then spread and cause sepsis, which is deadly.
Yeah.
It's super dangerous. And that goes to show how afraid I was because of the stigma around these infections. So where I'm at now is a full-time founder. We've grown 3x from 2023 to 2024. I'm excited to see how much we grow in 2025. We've grown on our TikTok presence. We're growing in sales. We're growing our product line. We have now 2 more products since the OG With Clarity that we launched in August of 2022. We've since launched 2 more products, another one coming this month or next month. I don't have a launch date yet, but it is a gut healing powder because the gut is super important for the vagina and reproductive health. So with Meraki.
Okay, well, let's talk about your products because let's start with the OG. What was that? What was the purpose of that, and what does it do?
Yeah, so the OG is With Clarity. It is a probiotic prebiotic formula. It has 50 billion colony forming units of probiotics, 45 billion of lactobacillus, 5 billion of bifidobacterium. And so these are the necessary bacteria that your vagina needs to stay protected and healthy. But because it's also an oral supplement, you're also helping the gut microbiome as well. So that's why including bifidobacterium was super helpful. There's a lot of compatibility between lactobacillus and bifidobacterium. So we consider the fact that because it's oral, it's also helping the gut microbiome as well. The prebiotic fibers that we chose in it are prebiotic fibers that have been shown to reduce gas and bloating, because a lot of people get uncomfortable symptoms when they take probiotics that have prebiotics in it. And that's because the prebiotics are often potato starch and things that are ineffective in such low doses and then also cause gas and bloating. So we wanted these prebiotic fibers to actually feed the good bacteria and be compatible, but also not cause you the gastrointestinal side effects of gas and bloating. And so we chose those. And then with that formula, we didn't stop there because my struggle was with urinary tract infections. There's a patented cranberry extract in the formula that contains 36 milligrams of proanthocyanidins, which a lot of people hear cranberries, they think of cranberry juice, cranberry supplements. But what a lot of people don't realize, and in my research, what I was discovering is it's not the cranberry extract itself that's helpful. What you want in the cranberries is the proanthocyanidins, the PACs. These are double bonded molecular structures that actually clinically have been shown to attach to the epithelial cells of the urinary tract and stop E. coli, uropathogenic E. coli, from attaching and causing a UTI. So I wanted to make sure that the cranberry used is a patented strain that actually has the 36 milligrams of proanthocyanidins, which is the clinically backed amount that you need. And then we also have vitamin D, because vitamin D is super important to rebuilding the immunity of the urinary tract. So that was the first product, tried and true. Everyone loved it. And working 2 jobs, I started to notice that my hormones were becoming imbalanced, and I was losing hair. I was growing acne. I was having acne. I was growing facial hair on my chin, unwanted facial hair. And I knew my hormones were off. I was like, something's off. And I started researching the hormones. And this is another space within female reproductive health. And in my research, I learned that so many people get yeast infections that are stress induced, which stress is your cortisol levels, which is your hormones. And when your cortisol is chronically elevated and chronically high, this actually lowers your estrogen, and low estrogen can make you lose the good bacteria in your vagina. So I thought, if someone is taking probiotics every single month, but the reason why they're losing this good bacteria is because of the hormonal imbalance and the instability in their hormones, well, then it's going to be really hard to keep the good bacteria in their body. So the With Clarity product was amazing for my UTI battle and restoring and maintaining the vaginal microbiome. But I also wanted to balance my hormones. So thus came With Harmony. And I made the second product. I took the same probiotic, prebiotic formula that's in With Clarity. So to still balance, restore, and balance the vaginal microbiome. But instead of that cranberry and vitamin D that's targeted for people who have a weakened urinary tract, a susceptible urinary tract, and they're dealing with UT struggles, this substituted it with a 4-ingredient complex that's meant to balance and add hormone harmony. So we have L-theanine, ashwagandha, inositol, and rhodiola, all of which have been shown to help with cortisol levels, your stress hormones, help with estrogen, androgens. So it's meant to support hormones. So if you are someone who's struggling with hormonally related infections, you feel that you get UTIs, BV, yeast infections because your hormones are imbalanced, With Harmony will restore and maintain the vaginal microbiome while also supporting your hormones. But if you are someone who's battling with UTIs and you're on multiple rounds of antibiotics and you have a weakened or compromised urinary tract system, With Clarity is for you. It also helps for people with BV and yeast infections. If you don't have hormonal imbalances, you can support the full scope, the vaginal microbiome and the urinary tract with Clarity. And then our newer products actually sitting right here is Thrive Immunity. So Thrive is an immune boosting supplement. And so a lot of people don't realize that when you're constantly having UTIs, BV, yeast infections, it's the same way if you had a cold every single month. Someone's going to look at you and say, you have a weak immune system, but nobody talks about it for the vagina. If you're having a yeast infection every month, UTIs, BV, that's a sign that the local vaginal immune system is weakened. And together with probiotics, an immune boosting supplement like Thrive will help strengthen the lactobacillus and keep the lactobacillus, and the lactobacillus helps strengthen the immune system. So there's a lot of synergy between the two products. So that's the products as it stands. And you could see how we think of the entire system and support the vaginal microbiome, not just with like band-aids, but the full system, the root causes. So that's why next is a gut healing powder, a powder that is meant to heal the gut, because a lot of people don't realize that if you're constantly getting urinary tract infections, it's likely that E. coli is overgrowing in your gut. And that's why it's reseeding into the bladder and causing UTIs. So you could take all the antibiotics and kill the bacteria. But if you're never restoring the balance, you won't see success. And I think that's the issue that we see in the health and wellness space, and maybe even in the medical space, is we constantly are being fed this narrative that we need to kill bacteria, kill bacteria, kill bacteria. And it's not about killing bad bacteria. Bad bacteria isn't always harmful. It's about creating a strong and resilient microbiome. And so we think of that approach when we're creating products.
Excellent. Certainly very passionate about it. And I guess that the feedback from your followers on TikTok and places like that almost directs you as to where to go next with your products and how to evolve the support as requested by people coming through.
Yeah, I mean, that means a lot to know what people want to see. And so, even with people struggling, I was sharing my hormonal imbalances and seeing people are like, I have PCOS and I always get BV because of PCOS. I always get this because of menopause or because I just had a baby. So, to see so many people struggling with hormonal imbalances and recognizing like the connection between I have PCOS, but I'm struggling with BV, or I get a yeast infection after I had my baby. People are connecting the dots, and it's like
Right.
there's perfect opportunity to fill this hole that exists.
Excellent. And one question because obviously you're a young woman. I'm not going to insult you by asking your age. I just know you're considerably younger than I am. You held down 2 jobs at one point while you were getting this through. What sacrifices have you made to move forward with
I mean, I would definitely say, and I actually sat on a panel not too long ago, a few months ago. And honestly, I think my own health was a sacrifice. I was at a very like low point, if you will, with the hormonal imbalances, and anybody who has female reproductive organs and has the female hormones already knows the struggle with our 30-day cycle. But to have that be imbalanced and to start losing your hair, growing unwanted facial hair, acne, and then not just like the physical phenotypical symptoms, but then you feel it in your brain too. So the depression, essentially, you feel the depression, and it's hard to combat that when you know that what you're doing and the thing that you love is your business and the thing you're so passionate about is your business, but there's this lingering like almost black cloud over your head and you don't know what it is. And so the hormonal imbalances, because of the level of stress that I was taking on, was really, really hard. And it was a big sacrifice. I felt like I was so distant from the people I love. And I sat on a panel and discussed this because entrepreneurs face this a lot. And entrepreneurs, once they enter this depression phase, they unfortunately, a trigger warning for anybody listening to this, but they are more susceptible to take their lives. And there's studies that have been done. And so I think that society has glorified hustle culture a lot. And I think I'm very proud that I've been able to be strong and persevere and run my business. But I think it's absolutely horrible to glorify that and to basically tell people like, oh, I was told, I mean, even my parents, when I started my business, they're like, you know what they say, no successful entrepreneur gets sleep. And like, that is just not a good thing to push. And obviously not wrong on my parents. They're just trying to support me. But
yeah.
now that I can go back to the university and speak to students who want to be entrepreneurs, I can tell them, you shouldn't compromise your own well-being and your health for the success of you and your business. And one of the best pieces of advice that I always give is that you cannot pour from an empty cup. And that is so, so important. I realized down the line, I was like, well, if Giana, the founder and CEO, isn't well, how is my business going to be well? My business cannot be successful and be well if the person running it isn't well. So
Yep.
I have to fill my own cup because I can't keep pouring from an empty cup. Otherwise, the business won't flourish. And that was the big sacrifice of walking away from the engineering job, knowing that that was the thing that was going to allow for my life. It was still going to be difficult. I'm saying goodbye to a source of income, and that's scary. And, I might have to be penny pinching and things like that. It's so frightening. It is. But to be able to now work a true 9 to 5, running my business and not have multiple things on my head and on my shoulders, I just have the business to focus, and it's still stressful at times, but I can manage it better. I'm much happier. And that's been reflected in the growth that the business has had. So I did sacrifice a lot of my health in order to start the business and begin the business. And at the time in my head, I just chalked it up to, I might as well do this now before I'm a mom and I'm having my children and all of these things. And so the sacrifice was worth it to me, but I don't encourage it because the business is only as healthy as you are. Ultimately, your health matters.
Absolutely. And well, I was going to ask you my final question, what advice do you have? And you've already covered it. So thank you. Well done. And so what does the future look like for you, for Giana Jarrah? What's still on your to-do list?
Yeah, well, building a team. So I'm in the works of building a team, but I always just dream of having this like huge team of these diverse, amazing women like standing beside me who believe in my mission, who are helping me grow brand awareness, brand visibility, products. Like I love being supported by people who give advice, want to see the business grow. And I'm just so open to everyone's opinions that I can't wait to build a team and be able to express my creativity and say, hey, I'm thinking of this product. What do you think? Because sometimes right now I'm like, wait, I have a product idea, and I go and I write it on my whiteboard, and that's the extent of it. But I can't wait to like open a door and be like, hey girls, so this is what I have as an idea. What are your thoughts? And I obviously have my beautiful friends and my family and my partner who are so supportive, and they all give me feedback. But when you have a team, and like even my mentors, I adore them. I'm so lucky. I'm surrounded by amazing people. But when it's your actual team, it'll be different. And so building a team is like the future right now, what I'm looking at, just growing the business, more products, building a community where women feel seen, they feel safe, they feel heard. And that's just super important to me.
I wish you every success. Absolutely, no doubt that it's going to be a phenomenal success. And just a final point, if people want to get your products, where do people buy them? Are they in shops? Are they online? Are they in doctors' surgeries? Where would you go?
Right now, we are exclusively selling just on our website. It's www.shopwithmerakico.com. And that's where you can find all of our products. We do sell on TikTok Shop as well. So it's only like internet. You could purchase us from online as of now. But yeah, hopefully one day we are sitting on store shelves. That's another thing for the future. I definitely want to be on store shelves in the future. But yeah, you can find us online either on our website or on TikTok Shop right now.
Excellent. Well, I don't know what to say, because you just know what you're doing. Your story is so compelling. It's been wonderful talking to you. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I wish you every success. Not that I think you need it, but I wish it anyway. And I look forward to continuing to follow your journey and see other products that you produce and where the company goes.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be on the podcast. So I'm very grateful to have sat down and chatted with you this morning.
Well, you enjoy the rest of your day. Have a fabulous weekend, and hopefully we'll speak again soon.
You as well. Thank you.
All right, take care. Well, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. She Leads Biotech is brought to you by CNA International USA, a woman-owned boutique search firm based in New York. If you're looking to hire talent for your company or want support in achieving your career goals, please reach out to me at contact@cnaint.com. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And remember, the success of every woman should be an inspiration to another. So don't be afraid to share yours. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.